It's an interesting week for me. It's full of anniversaries. The big anniversary is a 50-year anniversary, and it's 50 years ago, I think around July 15th. I don't have an actual date, but it feels right. When I first took LSD back in the 1960s. And it may seem odd to acknowledge that or celebrate that in the middle of a meditation class all these years later, but that was the moment that my life, which was going one way, went the other way. It was the first exposure I ever had to life being completely other than I had imagined it to be. That we were connected to the cosmos, that we were infinite beings, that death was not an end, that there was a mystical truth at the core of being that nobody had ever told me about, that the mystery of existence was greater than I had imagined, and that all I wanted to do was to figure it out. I just wanted to know more. And everything derailed at that point. Everything that was headed in one idea of a direction went off to a different direction. And, you know, I was, of course, very career obsessed at that point in time. I had just graduated from New York University, and I finally thought this was the moment that I would take the LSD that had been sitting in my wallet, a tablet that my friend Barry gave me. And he was a very good friend of Tim Leary's and everybody up in Harvard and Millbrook. And forgive me for all of you who've heard this story before, but the day of that, I decided to finally take this LSD. A man arrived at my apartment that I shared with Barry, and a guy named Michael Hollingshead, and he was carrying a vial of pure LSD liquid from Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland that was on its way to Tim Leary the next morning, and he did not want to carry it through the streets of New York, so he asked if he could leave it in our refrigerator. And Barry said sure. And that evening I took the dose of LSD that Barry had given me and waited for it to take effect, and it didn't. Just nothing happened. So Barry said, well, we've got this pure LSD in the refrigerator. Let me get an eyedropper, I'll give you a drop. And he gets the eyedropper and he goes, whoops. And the whole eyedropper, thousands and thousands of micrograms of LSD goes shooting down my throat, on top of the 650 micrograms I already had in the system. So it was what you would call a massive overdose. I don't want to go through the whole journey again because I've done this elsewhere. But again, it changed everything. It just obliterated all of my sense of what was real and important and significant in life. And then it made me go, now what? Now what? I know that at the end of that trip, I experienced that I was dead, that I had died. The journey to that was not pleasant for me. I fought it every step of the way. And death was an absolute surrender to a stillness that was very beautiful. And that stillness suddenly became impregnated, if you will, by my own rebirth. And I became, as this, something entered me. The stillness of me, I divided in half and in quarters and eighths and sixteenths. I just kept dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. And all of a sudden, chunks of my old life started to reappear in strange forms, like half of a hand and a ceiling, and another part of the carpet and my foot. And these things appeared. And all of a sudden, I was back where I was at the beginning. And I said, why am I back? And this voice, which was very clear and very distinct, said, to tell people what you saw. And that began a very important journey because I had no idea what I saw. I had no idea how to explain it to myself. And my friend Barry gave me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu song of God. And I sat down and read it immediately. And I said, had I read this yesterday, I would not have understood a word. And now everything it's talking about is concrete and real. And it was a brilliant book. And then I went on to read other books, the most important of which was Perennial Philosophy, which was an Aldous Huxley book in which he tries to describe the mystical experience at the core of all religious teachings as the same experience. So that Christian mysticism and Islamic mysticism and Buddhist mysticism and Hindu and Jewish, all of them talked about exactly the same thing. That was astounding to me. I didn't know any of that. But I was very drawn to Tibetan teachings, and I ended up leaving a very good job at NBC News as a film editor and hitchhiking slowly, gradually to India and then to Nepal, where I lived in a Tibetan monastery. And there are lots of stages to this journey, lots of stages. One of them was being in Afghanistan. I hitchhiked to India. And I was in Afghanistan, and I was in a trucker was taking us on across the desert, and stopped at night to sleep in what was the remains of a house, 3 walls, no ceiling, no fourth wall. And I had my sleeping bag, and I'm lying on the ground, and I'm looking up at the sky and the stars like none I've ever seen. And a voice came back to me, and it said, "You're going to have stories to tell." And I knew I would. And then on a boat on the Ganges, in the middle of a opium experience, another voice came to me and said, "Your ticket to awakening is that you create a masterpiece." And I don't know what that meant. I didn't feel capable of a masterpiece. I didn't feel capable of anything, but it was very directive. I came back to America, having not found a teacher, having exposed myself to a lot of teachings, and found Rudy, and knew immediately that I found my teacher. And Rudy initiated a emerging clarity and discipline in my life that had not been there before. The discipline was sitting every day, and doing the meditation that I've taught all of you. Every day, half an hour every morning, and before I went to bed at night, I sat. I never, ever questioned, ever, whether I would sit or not. I didn't debate it. I didn't think about it. I just did it. And it was very, very formative. It created structure in my life that was there my whole life. The other element, the clarity, was I started to have an idea about what we were doing and how to get there. The path to, I didn't know what to call it, but everybody did call it awakening and enlightenment, and I had an idea of what it was like. I had an idea of if I worked hard I would get there. I had an idea of how far removed I was from it and how much effort it took to finally arrive at this space. But I just kept plodding away, day by day by day by day, every day, year after year after year. 25 years after the LSD trip, I wrote a movie called Ghost. And Ghost opened 25 years ago tomorrow. And it was my chance to tell people what I saw. It was a way of telling people. There was no way to tell people everything because, one, I didn't understand everything, but it was a way to allude to it. It was a way to talk about life not ending at death, possibly not even beginning at birth. It created a larger context for our world. It had a very simple story, a mythic story, of a man who comes back from the other side to tell someone that he loved them, also to save her. And to do that, he had to become empowered by forces that were very potent. The ability to conjure up this energy in his belly, this kind of nuclear reactor, as he called it, that came directly from our teaching. You know, this idea of being in the navel chakra, to bring up this energy that a crazy ghost told him about. You know, the subway ghost tells him about this energy. And he says, you know, you have to bring everything into this place, and it's like a nuclear reactor, and he gives him all this directive, and he discovers that it's true. He has this explosive power, and he can touch things. He can move things, and that empowerment was really amazing, to be able to come from the other side. And all of this is in the film, and then it ends with a line that Jerry Zucker, the director, and I kept looking for about 2 years. He kept wanting one line that epitomized the movie, one line that he called the Casablanca line that everybody would remember. And we could never find it. I keep coming up with a line. He'd say, nah, that's not it, no. It doesn't work, no. And one day we were on our way to the pharmacy to pick up some medication, I think for Ari. And I don't know why I said it, but I said, you know, you can't take it with you. And then I went, whoa, wait a minute. You can take it with you. The love inside, you take it with you. He said, that's it. That's it. That's the line. And that became the signature line, other than ditto, for this movie and pottery. But here we are 25 years later, and a movie that, you know, mostly in the consciousness of people, movies last about an hour or maybe 20 minutes after you walk out of the theater and they kind of evaporate. We're talking about this movie all these years later. And one of the things that happened the other day was that VanityFair.com asked me if I had any memorabilia from ghosts that I could give them to put in an article they wanted to do. And I had nothing here, but I went back to LA the other week, and my friend Joe, who's working on a biography of my life actually, and has gone through all my boxes. I have tons of boxes, a closet, huge closet full of old scripts and memorabilia. We took out all the ghost boxes, there were almost 10 of them, and we started going through them, and found stuff that we could use for this presentation. But in the middle of it, I saw a picture, and it was a picture of me in Afghanistan. And it even said, Bruce in Afghanistan. And I looked at the picture, and I just went, I just stared at this kid in the picture, bearded kid, skinny little guy. And I took it back with me, and I brought it here. And I put it next to my bed. And the other day I woke up, and I picked up the picture, and I almost started crying. And I just said, I am so grateful to this kid. I am so grateful to what motivated him to quit a job at NBC News, which was, you know, life security, I suppose, and to head off to India. What motivated this kid who was scared to death of the world, basically, who realized very honestly that I was better friends with myself than I was with me. This kid had this courage to make this journey. I mean, and he also had the courage to take LSD. Why would he do that? You know, and I was so grateful to this being for having found the energy to walk away from safety, to walk away from security, to walk away from the known, to enter into the world of the unknown in search of the unknowable. And that journey has been, of course, a remarkable journey. And it brings me to this, sitting here with you 50 years after that explosion of confusion and new awareness, to a place of a kind of arrival. An arrival that took place some years ago and is still, I mean, it doesn't end. The arrival doesn't end. The arrival is finally coming to the very thing I was seeking. on all of that journey. I paid my price. I promised I would tell people what I saw. I was told in Afghanistan I would have stories to tell, and I found one. I was told to create a masterpiece. That one eluded me a little bit, and I kept saying to God, I said, does an Oscar mean it's a masterpiece? I really didn't know. And I asked the executive, who was the executive on Ghost, Lindsay Duran, I said, Lindsay, is Ghost a masterpiece? Did I create a masterpiece? She said, yeah, but it was called Jacob's Ladder, she said, which is actually a much better script than Ghost. Maybe not a better movie, but a better script. But it was like her acknowledgement of that and my clarity suddenly in what had happened. And it's like I've ticked off the boxes that I was required to tick off on the journey. And then I kept trying to understand, why have I not gotten there? Why have I not arrived at awakening? Why have I not arrived at enlightenment? I've spent all these years, it was at that point 45 years, every day trying to get there. And that is, again, you all know this story, but it's so meaningful to me. After having met all these, what I call non-dualists, Advaita Yoga teachers, who had arrived at awakening, I found that I couldn't make it happen, that all of the effort I was making wasn't working, that I didn't know what to do. I was at a complete loss for understanding of how to get the thing I'd been seeking my whole life. And I finally said, I don't care anymore. I don't care. Doesn't matter. I'm happy as I am. I got a wonderful life. I've had all these wonderful adventures. I had beautiful children, a wonderful wife. I just said, okay. I don't have to try anything. And in giving up the search, in what Rudy would call surrender, within a very short time, awakening occurred. And the awakening was that I had never been unawake. I'd never been unawake. And that we are, all of us, every one of us, awake. But we are so distracted, so crazily distracted by our story, by our mind, by our thoughts, by our journey, that we miss it. We just miss it. We don't get it. And we go through life in a state of heaviness and suffering, driven by desire and fear, hope for safety, which cannot exist in human experience, because none of us are safe and we're all going to die. The idea that you would find something that would finally give it to you, whatever that may be, a teaching, a teacher, a touch on the head, never comes. I had some of the best teachers in the world. They couldn't give it to me. What gave it to me was the realization was that there was no one to give it to. That there was no me. There was no Bruce. Which makes zero sense to the human mind. But there was no Bruce. There just was. That thing which felt it was at the center, this Bruce person, that had all these thoughts and ideas and ambitions and hopes and needs, things to accomplish, all of that stuff, that person seeking just fell away. And all that was left was this, which has always been here. Where is it? This doesn't go anywhere. And it just keeps changing. It keeps, whatever it's doing, it does its dance, it unfolds, and we are in it. We're definitely characters within it. We're not here. But we're not the core of it. We're not the center of it. And we're not even the history of it. Even though we have a history, and that history has its logic or illogic, it has its progression or lack of progression, we are the very happening of existence. We are the thing that is happening. And the thing that's happening includes everything. Not us and it. Everything simultaneously. It's all up arising at the same time out of whole cloth. And to see yourself as separate from it, as different from it, as somehow being kept away from it, or not being allowed to know it, is of your own making. It's your own making. And what it really is, it's an odd word, but one of my friends and the guy whose talk I was listening to when my awakening occurred, Paul Hederman, is very involved in the realm of addiction. He's broken through addiction with 12-step programs and also with his own awakening. And he keeps us reaffirming the word addiction. And the addiction he talks about is our addiction to being separate, being who we think we are. And I look at all of you when I teach, and I see the threads of addiction in everybody. And I try to sever them wherever I can to let you know that you're not the person you keep reaffirming yourself to be. You're not as weighted down by your story. You're not as punished by your memories. You're not as conflicted by all the drama that's circulating around you. It's all there, but you're not it. And you begin to realize that in this profound way, or maybe it just completely realizes itself. You go, oh, and that's liberation. It's freedom. It's awakening. You're not the story that you're telling yourself every minute of your life. And all I'm trying to do is undermine that story, undermine the addiction, because why do you get addicted to such awful things? But mostly addictions are to awful things. They give you kind of momentary pleasure. The alcoholic, the drug addict, sex addict, everybody has addictions to all of these different things, but the pleasure is very short-lived. And then there's a lot of suffering that comes. And a lot of us have addictions to ideas about ourself, your goodness, your not goodness, your service to the world or your lack of service to the world. We all have these ideas about ourselves that punish us mostly, or limit us, or extol us in some way. Whatever those addictions are to those ideas, they're very hard to undermine. Really hard. And I think when you come here, it's like to an AA meeting. Everybody's sitting around talking about how they have addictions, and that I'm addicted, and I'm, and then the 12-step program, which I admire enormously, is a way of breaking down that awareness of your addiction so that you don't have to live in the addiction. But you have to recognize that it exists as an addiction, because otherwise you can't help break it down at all. You have to free yourself of that addiction. So, in a way, what we're doing here in seeking enlightenment is something that Paul calls traveling lighter. Enlightenment is being lighter. What does it mean to be lighter? It means not going there. Not going into that place of weighted consciousness that pulls you down to the basement of your being over and over and over and over. But first you have to recognize that that's what you're doing. You're totally responsible for this being caught. You're the one who pushes the elevator button down. You go there every time. You go, okay, time to go to the basement, time to punish myself a little bit, time to do whatever I have to do. And you go back down into that place, and then you come here and you feel, oh, I'm floating again, I feel good again. And then you get in the car and you go to punish yourself again, or you go put yourself in another place that's uncomfortable, and you do it over and over again. And the trick is to begin to watch that happening. It's kind of mindfulness meditation, I guess, but watch what you're doing. And when you do it, just go, no, I don't need to do that. But you have to know you're doing it in order to say no, not to do it. You have to begin to look at yourself enough to know, look what I do. Look at the stories I tell myself over and over and over. It's the same story, and I always believe it, and I always get caught by it. I'm always made miserable by it, and in the end, I will die an unhappy, unsatisfied, incomplete human being, which is how most people die, because they never once stopped getting out of telling themselves the sad story, the but. I would be enlightened, but. You know, I did this when I was 4 years old, or you know, I mean, you know your own buts. Everybody has buts. You know, it's the reason you can't, the reason it won't happen, the reason it shouldn't happen, the reason you're not worthy, the reason there's nothing available for you in enlightenment, even though you're going to give your life to trying. You know, giving your life to trying is its own trap. It really is its own trap. You try to get there, and you try and you try, and you feel worthy for trying, but you don't get there, and that's because you're not good enough, and you fail because you believe you're meant to fail. Well, all I can tell you, you're not meant to fail. It's available to you in this moment. If I could hand it to you on a plate, I would. In a way, I am giving it to you. I'm telling you, the very thing you are seeking in life is this right now. And the way the mind reacts to that is kind of crazy. You know, it's like a little bit warm in the room, and you know, and I've got things to do this afternoon, and I don't have the things in life that I wanted. You know, I didn't get enough money, I didn't get kids, I didn't get awards, I didn't get recognition. I mean, there's all this stuff that's going on in people's heads. So I say, you're it right now, and you are until those thoughts come back in. So when those thoughts come back in, your job is to go, whoa, no, no, no. Don't accept them. Do not accept those thoughts. Your job with consciousness is to say no to everything that tells you but. Whenever but comes in, go, gone. But. And you get rid of it. Or don't engage it. And after a while, you don't even have to do that. After a while, it hardly matters. Because you're just so practiced in a way. You're so free of that stuff that you don't have to fight it. You just are traveling lighter. You see it come up and you go, you know, it's just not an issue. So yeah, of course. And you get really good at it. And you get really good at being light or enlightened. And you live that. And I love to tell you this, but I see the but on everybody's faces. Everybody's face is going but, you know. And it's like, no need to do that. I know you've got a life story of suffering and trauma, and your mother didn't do this, and your dad did that, and your friends never liked you. I mean, whatever. I don't know what the story is, but you all have them, and you bring it up at every opportunity in order to say but. And if you want to keep doing that, that's fine. The problem is coming here for your little weekly hit of freedom. You come here for your weekly hit of freedom, and then you go back to prison. This is the courtyard, you know. They let you out once a week for an hour or two, and you walk around the courtyard, then you go back in the cell. And I'm telling you, you don't have to do it. You don't have to ever go back in that cell ever again. And you can make that decision really now. It's really that simple. And the liberation you're looking for, the thing you've been seeking is, and I'll put it very simply, the miracle of this. Not the mundane, boring, oh my God, another day, I got to get up, I got to go to the job, I got to do this. Not that world. The thing of the sun came up. There's light. There's food. There's breakfast. There's coffee. There's being. I mean, it's not to be a mental trick. It's not a mental trick. It's a realization of what this is. That's the whole idea, that you look at this differently, as a miracle and a gift and a statement of infinite truth, right here and now, period. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, never will be those. It will always be this very second, and you don't have to go very far to get to this second. And there's almost nothing to do except open your eyes and realize what this is. You're done. You know, I mean, one of the things I was carrying for a long time was my fear and worry about my children. And I may have said this last week, I don't remember, but I had this great realization. It's not my problem. My kids are not my problem. Period. Done. And I told that to my son at dinner the other night. I said, I love you so much, but you're not my problem. You figure it out. You're in God's hands, not mine. I don't have to carry that weight anymore. And it's gone. It's completely gone. You know? I mean, there's always little things you find, and the part of the awakening process is how the little things come back and kind of surprise you. But then you go, oh, that too. And you just get freer and freer and freer and lighter and lighter and lighter, and you just live that way until there's nothing that grabs you.
Bruce, I know you and Blanche have grandchildren, and I was wondering, have you ever seen that movie Frozen?
Mm-hmm.
Because I like the song in there.
Let go. Yeah,
Let
of course.
go.
Oh, well, I mean,
Yeah.
you and half the world,
Yeah.
you know. Except my granddaughter said, I don't want to let go, which I found very compelling. You know, I don't want to let go. No, it's a good teaching, but of course that letting go is to get something. And
I haven't seen the movie, I just like the song, and I sing it to myself
Sure.
when I'm having a problem.
Letting-
I need to let go.
well, no, it's a good line to give yourself. You know, it's a good idea. I'm talking about something fundamental, core, not a temporary solution, not a Band-Aid to your life. You know, that can come up occasionally, and then there will be other things that will pull you way down, and let go will not even come up as a possibility. The thing is, and again, it's called realization for a reason, it's to go, oh, I get it. This is it. This is all there is, period. This is all there is, and you accept it. I can't teach you anything beyond that. You know, Byron Katie, I don't really know her, but someone told me that one of her books is called Love What Is. It's a great title, great title. But, you know, the idea of having to love it actually seems to be like a directive. In a way, I would kind of say accept what is, but that seems to be a directive too, because you don't always love it, but it just is. And it kind of has to come down to something other than that. There's nobody to do anything. As long as there's somebody to accept and love it, there's still this dualism. It's, you are what is. Why fight what you are? Why fight it? Why fight it on any level whatsoever? There's no reason. So I can say this to you week after week after week, and I think the message will always be kind of sweet and kind of compelling. But I understand now why teachers stop talking. I truly get it. I mean, I've said it all in my mind. Maybe I can find different ways of saying it along the way, but and you know, I mean, the great poets keep finding different ways of sparking you into awareness. And these talks, which are very direct, you know, maybe they help somewhat, maybe they'll help people 20 years from now. I don't have any clue. But I do know verbalizing it is only vaguely helpful. It's only somewhat helpful. In the end, it's your journey, it's your awakening, it's your fighting to arrive in that space of knowing. It's totally in your hands. It's not in my hands, it's not in anybody else's hands. Your coming here is an indication that you want it, that you want something. You may want me to hand it to you, but I can't, and I announce that. But if you want something, it's right here now. It can't be any simpler than that. You know, and if you get frustrated by that piece of information and you get really angry at it because you're not happy in this moment or any of those things, work with that, because that's the teaching. If you're miserable here right now, take a look at that. Be with the misery. What is making you miserable? Why would you be unhappy in this moment? And you will discover, if you go in deep enough, it's the story you're telling yourself. That's all it is. It's a story that's making you miserable. I don't have, I should have had, I might have had, I wanted to have, I didn't get, I wish I had gotten. That's what's making you miserable in this moment. Nothing else. The moment is not making you miserable. It never has, it never will. The only thing that will make you miserable is your reaction to it. And the reaction is the source of suffering. Reacting to what is makes an is and a you. Not reacting, there's just is. And that's what comes when you awaken. It just is. And the benefit, if you want benefits, and I'm not sure there are a lot of benefits, but the benefit is you travel lighter in enlightenment. Any questions?
I spend a lot of time looking at my own story that needs to be healed and my friends' stories that need to be healed to try and get the lesson out of them or get them to heal them. Is that useful to do? Because
well, it depends
it's sort
on
of like a different...
who's doing it. I mean, if your mind and ego and your story are doing it for the sake of your mind, ego, and story, then you're just contributing more to their mind, ego, and story on some level. Who are any of us to heal anybody? You know, especially if it has an agenda behind it, you know, even a good agenda. Like, I love these people, I would like them to be happy. I know I'm not happy, but I would like them to be happy. Or I want them to have my happiness, which for most people is a very temporary state. Nobody has permanent happiness. So you're kind of trying to get people on board with your thing so that you have more of a connection and a communion and a harmony, and that makes your life sweeter and better. And so that kind of is self-serving in some way. And the real urge to heal other people comes from a higher place, and it does for you too. I mean, it's really, I know that's where it comes from, but it passes through the I as it goes to them. And if you can bypass the I and let it just be the cosmic being that you are, wanting to love life and the world and all that's in it, it's a whole other agenda, because you don't get anything from it. There's no benefit to you. If anything, like I've said many times, I could be having brunch today or spending time with my kids, but there's this urge, this thing that wants to share this message. I don't know why I keep questioning that, but I go, okay, and I keep doing it. But I get nothing back from it. If you awaken, I'm not going to be happier as Bruce, but the universe, that which you truly are, will be radiating between us in a way that there's no two at all. We just add to the luminosity of conscious awareness and being. So, you know, look at the thing that wants to help people. Because it's really kind of interesting. A lot of people are helpers without understanding very deeply their need to help, and their need for it to define them and separate them and extol them, exalt them on some level. You know, it's subtle. It's very subtle. I talked a few weeks ago about self-regard and how we use self-regard as a way of separating ourselves on some level or maintaining a separate identity. That's a good person. I'm a good person. You know, that creates its own problems. What I'm talking about is take care of your own business. Take care of your thing, which is wake up to this. Period. And you can't make yourself wake up to this, so trick yourself into it.
So part of that was that I spent a lot of time on my own story, just like my friend's story. So part of it is my own to try and
and it doesn't work. Yeah. I mean, it helps. It helps. I'm telling you, if you can look at your story really dispassionately, if you can see the addictive elements that are happening and say no to them, you will stop a lot of the process that's getting in the way. And you will start to slowly find a much clearer avenue toward this moment. Because you won't be obstructing it with story. You'll just be letting it go. And then I talk about the pop. For some people, it's not a pop. It's like an LSD experience. It's like huge, vast awareness. For you, it won't be that, because you've traveled so far down the road. For you, it will be, oh. And that could happen at any second, but not out of Shelley wanting it. It's something deeper inside saying, I'm not going to fight this anymore. I'm not going to fight what is. Period. I'm not going to fight it again. then it kind of arises.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I think what I hear you saying is what I've been trying to do when I have a story is to heal it, whereas
Right,
instead I should just say, just shut up or stop.
Well,
or,
yeah, I mean, you can try to heal it. I mean, look, I was told, tell a story, you know, tell what you've seen to the world, and I followed that out. I did what I was supposed to do karmically in the world. You may have stuff like that you need to do in your story. Your story may have told you, do this, do this, do this. But there comes a point where you have to go, I'm playing out the objectives of either a higher voice or just my own little inner voice that's trying to, you know, keep my wheels spinning. You know, and people's wheels spin to the very end. And you don't move very far, you just, and what's that about? But it's really what most life is about. And as you get to be your 70 or 80 or whatever, and you're doing that, it's pure, it's hellish. You know, what am I doing? Why? You know, but the great thing about getting old, and the wisdom of getting old, is that a lot of people who get old finally do ask the question, what am I doing? Who cares? I am done with that. And so a lot of aging is liberating. And it's part of the natural process of life. And if you're living really naturally, you may in fact get awakened just, not even by spiritual life, just by enough. Enough. Good word. Enough. Done it. Don't have to play that game anymore. It's really wonderful. You're not my problem, life. You're not my problem. You are what you are, and I'm just here, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to turn on the TV and sit back and relax and enjoy my existence. I'm not going to be, I have to go to marches, and I have to do this, and I have to do, you can do whatever you want. It's your life. Enjoy. Be grateful.
I just feel like going home and having a few of those drops that you have to facilitate the process.
You know, I mean, I'm not a proselytizing for that, and I have to say, it was very earth-shaking, and I don't know that you need it to be that. It just was that for me. I was so derailed into a direction that would not have ever served me on any level, and something had to course correct that. You are not on the wrong course. I was desperately on the wrong course. I had a meaningless existence coming up, and it just said no. Or something in me knew it and just said, let me try this. And it changed directions immediately. I do have some friends who have dabbled now in, not LSD, but this new version of DMT, which is a kind of drug for people who are looking for a conscious expansion. It's pretty traumatizing for them. I mean, in a profound way.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't tried it yet.
I don't recommend it. You know, I don't recommend it. All it does is put you back right here with a certain kind of potency of search, yeah, and a kind of maybe even desperation of trying to figure it out. The reality is so simple, and I don't know how to get anybody there other than to tell them that this is it right now. The totality of the teaching. And I tell that to you because you have so earned the right to know that. And if you can just look at this story thing that you deal with, that tells you that you're not there, that tells you want something to put you there, I'm telling you, that's a mind event keeping you from getting there. It's your way of avoiding not getting. You're not there. But you want to not be there for some reason. Like you just said a minute ago, that's what you're afraid of. If you weren't afraid of it, you would take that thing and you'd get there. And being here right now, for the mind and the story that's telling you that you're afraid of the other, it's also afraid of this. Because it takes you out of the picture. It means your whole life, not that it was meaningless, it's just, it was not your life. It was, if you will, God's life, the universe's life. It was a life. It's not yours at all. It just happens to be the version of the life that you got to see life through these particular eyes at this point. But that's all it is. It's temporary. It's on loan. And let it go, because it's all going to get taken away anyway. But that fear thing that you announce, that's the thing to look at. Because why would one not want to be here now? Why? Because it means that there's no you and nobody wants to hear that. You're very invested in being us. And that's kind of stupid in the end, because what we are is so much more. You know, why take a tiny little truffle off of a table that's filled with cake and ice cream and chocolates and puddings, and why take one bite of one little thing and think that's who you are? You're the whole thing. I mean, I should add to that you're also, you know, bitter stuff, and you know, you're everything, and the opening to that is very important. You're not the story you're telling yourself. That's all I can tell you. Okay, guys, I think that's enough. Thank you. See you. I will be here next week, and maybe 1 week after that, and then we're going to do some traveling, but we'll be in touch. Okay. Lots of love.